Disclaimer: this content is only for mature audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. I never expected a quiet weekend at home to shift the way I saw someone I'd known for years. It started like any other afternoon: laundry in the machine, the soft hum of the TV in the background, and a cool breeze slipping through the cracked window. I was folding towels when he walked in, my stepson, Jason. He had just turned 23. The way his compliments didn't feel like a son trying to be sweet, but a man noticing a woman. It made me feel things I didn't want to admit. There's a line you don't cross, even when the past is complicated and the present feels confusing. I tried to ignore it. Maybe I was reading too much into things. Maybe it was just a phase, or me projecting some emptiness onto someone who happened to be around. I kept telling myself that. Until that night. We were sitting in the living room, just the two of us. A movie played, but neither of us was really watching. The light from the screen flickered across his face, and I could feel his eyes on me. I looked over, ready to joke about how bad the movie was, when he said it. Calm, quiet, but direct. Do you ever think about me like that? I froze. The words didn't make sense at first. My stomach turned. My mouth went dry. I should have laughed, brushed it off, scolded him even. But I didn't, because deep down, some part of me had been waiting to hear that question, terrified of it, but waiting. Now everything hangs in the air, silent, dangerous, and full of possibility. I don't know what I'll say next. I don't know what happens from here. But whatever this is between us, it's no longer hiding. I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. The room suddenly felt too small, the air too thick. Jason didn't move, didn't rush me. He just sat there, watching me with a kind of calm I didn't expect. Like he had been waiting for this moment, like he knew he'd finally said what had been sitting between us for too long. My heart was racing. I looked away, focused on the coffee table, on anything that wasn't his eyes. My mind went in 100 directions at once. This was wrong. This was messy. And yet, there was a part of me that couldn't stop thinking about all the little things that led up to this moment. After his dad and I split 2 years ago, things changed. Jason was already an adult, living on his own most of the time, but he started checking in more. At first, I thought it was just concern. He's always been a good kid, thoughtful in ways that surprised me. But over time, those check-ins turned into long phone calls, late-night messages, shared playlists, inside jokes. He'd come by to help with errands, fix things I probably could have figured out myself. And every time, he made me laugh. He made me feel seen. Not like a mom, not like someone older, just like a woman. And I let myself enjoy that. Maybe I shouldn't have. But I never crossed a line. At least, not out loud. Now he had. I could still hear the question echoing in my head. Do you ever think about me like that? He didn't look nervous. His expression was open, but unreadable. I kept wondering if this was some kind of test, if he'd say he was joking or laugh and brush it off if I freaked out. But there was no laughter in his eyes. He meant it. And that scared me more than anything. Because the truth was, I had thought about him like that. Not often. Not clearly. Just in flashes, those accidental glances when he'd stretch or smile a certain way. Those quiet moments when we'd talk and I'd forget the world outside the room. And every time, I pushed the thoughts away. Buried them. But now, here they were. Out in the open. I finally looked at him. He didn't speak again, just held my gaze, letting the silence stretch between us. Jason, I said, but my voice cracked a little. I didn't know what I was going to say. My throat felt tight, and my chest was heavy with all the unsaid things I suddenly didn't know how to put into words. Before I could continue, he leaned back, just slightly, giving me space. You don't have to say anything, he said quietly. I just needed you to know. That should have made it easier. It didn't. Now I was stuck between what was right and what was real. And the truth was, I didn't know which way to go. Not yet. All I knew was that everything between us had changed. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, hearing his voice again and again. Do you ever think about me like that? It looped through my mind, dragging every memory, every small moment we'd shared into new light. Things I hadn't thought twice about before suddenly felt like pieces of a puzzle I'd ignored on purpose. The next morning, he was gone. No note. Just the quiet hum of the refrigerator and his coffee mug rinsed and sitting in the sink. I didn't know whether to be relieved or disappointed. Maybe both. I kept waiting for my phone to buzz, for him to text, to explain himself or maybe take it all back. But it never came. I went through the day like a ghost. Drove to the store. Smiled at neighbors. Pretended like I wasn't unraveling inside. Every face I passed looked too normal, like I was the only one carrying something impossible in her chest. Later that evening, I got a call from my friend Hannah. She's known me since before the divorce, before Jason was even in my life. She picked up on my mood right away. "You sound weird," she said. "What's going on?" I paused. Thought about lying. But something about Hannah's voice made me want to tell someone, at least part of it. "Jason said something strange last night," I said. "Strange how?" I hesitated. "Just personal." He caught me off guard. There was silence on the line for a beat too long. "Personal, like in a way he shouldn't?" I didn't respond. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Are you serious?" "Don't," I snapped more sharply than I meant to. "It wasn't like that." "Wasn't like what?" "I don't know," I muttered. I need time to think." Hannah went quiet, then said, "You know people would talk if they found out, right?" I didn't answer. That was the part eating at me more than anything. What it would mean. What it would look like. Even if nothing had happened, even if it never did, the idea was already there. But it wasn't just about other people. It was about me. About whether I was willing to admit that I wasn't just some victim of awkward timing. That maybe I had a part in this too. Later that night, as I was wiping down the kitchen counters, Jason's key turned in the door. My chest tightened. I didn't turn around right away. "I didn't mean to disappear," he said softly. I swallowed, then faced him. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept either. "I just needed space," he continued. I know what I said wasn't fair. "It wasn't about fair," I replied. "It was just a lot." We stood in silence again, same room, same air between us. Still thick with everything unspoken. "I'm not trying to mess up your life," he said finally. "I know," I said. "But it's already complicated." He nodded, and I could see he understood. But he didn't look sorry. And that might have been the most dangerous part. The days that followed felt like walking a tightrope. Jason and I moved around each other carefully, like we were afraid of making too much noise, of breaking whatever fragile balance was holding us in place. He stayed in the guest room, but the walls between us felt thin, like we could both hear the thoughts neither of us dared to say out loud. I kept myself busy, cleaning things that didn't need cleaning, cooking meals I barely touched. He offered to help, but I turned him down every time. Not because I didn't want him there, but because I didn't trust myself not to look at him the wrong way. Every glance felt too loaded now. Every silence too loud. One night, I poured a glass of wine, thinking it might calm my nerves. I sat on the back porch, the cool air brushing against my skin, hoping it would clear my head. I hadn't heard Jason come outside until I saw him in the doorway. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. I shrugged, not trusting my voice. He sat across from me, a little too close, but not close enough to touch. Neither of us spoke for a while. Crickets filled the silence, the kind of quiet that presses on your chest more than soothes it. He leaned back in the chair, eyes on the stars, and said, "You don't have to be scared of me." I looked at him. "I'm not scared of you." "Yes, you are," he said gently. "You're scared of what this means." I hated that he was right. I hated that he could read me so easily. But what scared me more was the part of me that wasn't afraid of what it meant, but of what it didn't. What if this wasn't a phase? What if I really had feelings for him? And what if I couldn't turn them off? "You're young," I said. "You don't know what you want yet." He turned to face me. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Talk to me like I'm a kid." "I didn't mean it like that, but you said it," he cut in. "And you keep saying it." Like, if you remind yourself enough times, it'll make this easier to ignore. He wasn't wrong. That's exactly what I'd been doing. I stared down at my wine glass, the swirl of red catching the porch light. I care about you, I said, almost whispering. His jaw tightened slightly. I know. I just don't get why that has to be a bad thing. The tension between us pulled tighter, like a string ready to snap. He looked at me, eyes burning with something deeper, hope, fear, maybe both. Tell me you've never thought about it, he said. Tell me right now, and I'll walk away. I froze. The words sat on my tongue, heavy and impossible. Because the truth wasn't simple. It wasn't black and white. And he knew it. He waited. I breathed. The silence grew. I didn't say a word. The silence between us felt like it could shatter at any moment, but I still didn't speak. Jason stared at me, waiting, eyes searching mine for some kind of answer. I looked away, afraid that if I held his gaze too long, I'd give in. And I couldn't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Before either of us could say another word, my phone buzzed on the side table. I grabbed it, grateful for the interruption. The screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen in over a year. Mark. My ex-husband. Jason's father. The message was short. Hey, can we talk? I'm in town. My stomach dropped. Of all the nights, of all the moments for him to reappear, it had to be now. I could feel Jason watching me, and I knew he saw the way my expression changed. What is it? He asked, voice low. I hesitated. Your dad. He wants to meet. Jason leaned back slowly, blinking like he was trying to process the words. You're kidding. No, I said. I haven't heard from him in months. Jason's mouth twisted into something between a laugh and a grimace. Of course he shows up now. I didn't plan this, I said defensively, though I wasn't sure who I was trying to convince, him or myself. Jason stood up and walked to the edge of the porch, gripping the railing. The tension that had been simmering all week now snapped into something sharper. You think he knows? I shook my head. There's nothing to know. Nothing's happened. He turned around. You think that matters? If he finds out we're even having this conversation, he'll lose it. I hadn't thought that far ahead. But Jason was right. If Mark saw the way Jason looked at me, or picked up on the tension in the air, it wouldn't take much to figure out that something had shifted. And Mark never handled jealousy well. Even when we were married, he had a way of twisting things, turning small misunderstandings into storms. I rubbed my temples, feeling suddenly tired. I'll meet with him. Alone. It's probably nothing. Jason didn't answer. He just looked at me with that same unreadable expression, the one that made me feel exposed and understood all at once. Don't, I added quickly. Don't make this into more than it is. What if it already is more? He asked. I didn't have an answer for that. And before I could even try to come up with one, Jason's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then frowned. It's my mom, he said. She says she's driving up this weekend. Out of nowhere. Now I just stared at him. Two parents, both showing up at the exact same time, neither of them knowing the full truth. Or maybe they did. Maybe they sensed something. Maybe it was already too late to keep this hidden. Jason looked at me. What are the odds? I didn't know. But I had a bad feeling they weren't in our favor. By Saturday, everything felt like it was pressing in at once. Mark was already in town. He'd texted again that morning, saying he wanted to drop by the house just to talk. And Jason's mom, Laura, was on her way too. She hadn't visited in over a year, and now, suddenly, both of them were circling like they could feel something was off. Maybe they could. Jason and I barely spoke that morning. We were careful around each other, like two people guarding a secret that had gotten too big to carry. I kept telling myself we hadn't crossed any lines, but the truth is, we'd been towing the edge for days. Emotionally, we were already there. By late afternoon, the doorbell rang. Mark. I opened the door slowly, forcing a smile. He stood there in a button-down shirt and jeans, trying to look casual, but his eyes were scanning the house before he even stepped inside. Hey, he said, hugging me quickly. You look good. You too, I said, stepping back. Come in. Jason was in the kitchen, pretending to scroll through his phone, but I could feel the tension in him from across the room. Mark glanced at him and gave a stiff nod. Didn't know you'd be here, he said to Jason. Jason didn't look up. Didn't know you'd be dropping by. The mood was instantly tight. I tried to smooth it over. Can I get you coffee or something? No, I'm fine, Mark said, still watching Jason. Just wanted to talk for a bit. Alone. Jason looked at me, waiting for me to say no. But I nodded. It's okay. He walked out without a word, shoulders tight. I led Mark to the living room. He sat down, fingers laced together, like he was rehearsing something. I know this is out of nowhere, he started. But I've been thinking about us. About everything I messed up. I froze. Mark, I'm not saying we pick up where we left off, he cut in. Look, I've changed. I've been in therapy. I know I was controlling, jealous. I see that now. I sat still, heart pounding for a different reason now. And then I hear Jason's been spending time here. A lot of time. And I guess I started wondering, what's going on? He looked me straight in the eye. Is there something I should know? I swallowed hard. No, there's nothing going on. He stared at me like he didn't quite believe it. But then he gave a slow nod. Okay. Before I could say more, the door opened. Laura stepped inside, suitcase in hand. Jason was right behind her. Mark turned toward her, confused. You're here too. Laura blinked, caught off guard. I could ask you the same. And then, like the air got sucked out of the room, she looked at Jason, then me. Her eyes narrowed just slightly. She walked forward, calm, almost too calm. Jason, can I talk to you? Alone. Jason looked at me, then nodded slowly. As they stepped into the hallway, Mark leaned closer. You sure there's nothing going on? I didn't answer. Because suddenly, I wasn't so sure either, especially when I heard Laura's voice from the hallway, low and sharp. So you finally told her, didn't you? I stood frozen in the living room, listening to Laura's voice drifting faintly from the hallway. Jason didn't respond right away, but I knew from the way his shadow shifted under the hallway light that whatever they were talking about wasn't simple. Mark sat across from me, arms crossed, eyes flicking toward the hallway like he wanted to go snoop, but was holding himself back. It felt like the air had thickened, like the whole house was holding its breath. Minutes passed before Jason and Laura came back into the room. Jason looked pale, but calm. Laura's face was unreadable, tight lips, eyes darting between me and Mark. I opened my mouth to speak, but she cut me off gently. You deserve to know the truth, she said. Her voice wasn't angry, just tired. Jason's been carrying something for a while. We both have. After the divorce, he felt lost. Not because of the split, but because of what he started feeling. He told me first. I told him to keep his distance, that it would pass. But it didn't. Jason looked at me, guilt in his eyes. I never planned to say anything. I tried to push it away. I swear. Mark stood, tense. What are you saying? Laura turned to him. Let it go, Mark. This isn't about you. He scoffed, but said nothing. Jason took a breath. I said what I said because I couldn't keep pretending, and I knew it would change everything. But I also knew I couldn't lie to her or myself anymore. I felt the knot in my chest loosen. Not because it made everything easier, but because at least now, everything was in the open. I didn't owe anyone explanations anymore. Not Laura. Not Mark. Not even Jason. I looked at him and said quietly, I don't know what happens next. But I need time. Real time. Not just a few days of pretending everything is normal. He nodded. I understand. Mark shook his head, muttering something under his breath, then grabbed his coat. You've all lost your minds, he said, walking out without another word. Laura stayed behind for a minute, watching me with something like reluctant acceptance. Then she followed him out. Jason stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, like he didn't know whether to stay or go. I think you should go for now, I said softly. Not forever. Just for now. He nodded, eyes holding mine. Okay. And then he left, closing the door behind him. I sat down on the couch, finally alone. The house felt still, heavy with everything that had been said. But underneath that, there was something else. Relief. Honesty. The truth, even in its messiest form, had a strange way of clearing the air. Sometimes, life doesn't tie itself up neatly. Sometimes the ending isn't a clean break or a perfect moment. Sometimes, it's just a pause, a breath between chapters. If this story hit you in any way, tell me what you felt. Would you have made the same choices? Would you want to see what happens next? Drop a comment and let me know if you want a sequel. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support means everything, and it helps more than you know.